as well. Good afternoon, LinkedIn. I'm Mel Johnson, and I am a social media trainer, strategist, and consultant who helps businesses with practical and solutions and strategies that they can actually implement. And I'm here with Jodie Newman, who I'll let introduce herself in a minute today, to talk to you all about how thinking more creatively will positively impact your marketing, and we'll be sharing some tips on how to actually get that done as well. If you do have any questions as we go through, do pop them in the comments, and Jodie and I will answer them at the end. But Jodie, I'm going to hand over to you to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mel. So Jodie Newman from the Business Allotment. We are the place where businesses grow creatively, and it's about taking business owners from that business as usual thinking to business as unusual thinking. That will move your business forward. It will help you stand out. And I know it's something we're going to kind of talk about in a minute, Mel, and just grow your business.
Yeah, I think, and I'm so glad that we've had two people comment, because I couldn't actually see whether we are live, which I think is probably down to the Storm Kieran or whatever we're calling it. So I think the first thing we wanted to cover, Jodie, and I know we talk about quite this lot, I think, is around what is creativity, because I feel that quite often, particularly people within the sort of professional services space, so and I don't want to pick on anyone, but people like accountants, solicitors, HR, they kind of feel, oh, well, I'm not very creative, because creativity is actually about, design or
colouring in,
production, or colouring in, marketing. So do you want to just give us a bit of a sort of what your kind of definition of creativity is, and why we think it's so important?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously I'm very diligent. I did some homework. The Google definition is the use of imagination or original ideas to create something. So I would immediately add on to that create something different, because we don't want a business to be creating the same things over and over again, either for ourselves or for the marketplace. But I think for me, creativity is just an essential business tool. And I think where people see it as, this kind of, well, it's nothing to do with me. It's about somebody sitting on top of a hill smoking a gauloise, staring up and waiting for the muse to strike. Doesn't feel very business critical. But when you say it's the thing that can power you to be different, to stand out, to get you somewhere you couldn't go with thinking that you do every day, then I think for me, creativity is an essential business tool.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And I think as well, it's the having that time, because, all of us are wearing 67 hats or however many of them. It's kind of carving out that time to sort of have those ideas. And I know, I mean, I see with the work I do, and I do a lot of coaching, and people quite often say to me, I just don't know what to say. I've got no inspiration.
Yeah.
So, and I know you share a lot, particularly here on LinkedIn and just with us, or generally we'll work with you, and kind of ways of getting those creative ideas flowing. So do you want to give us some of your golden nuggets that you share?
Sounds like I've just laid them. Well, I think if you've got creative constipation, this is the place to be. So I think there's two things for me. The first one is about warming up, about those workouts, because I think we feel it's a sort of divine skill that somehow some of the population get and some of them just don't. And damn it, I wasn't in the queue for creativity, so I'll just carry on doing it in this really boring way. That's not, everyone can be more creative. It's not to say everyone is going to be, a creative genius, but who's to say what that is, quite frankly. But if you do creative workouts and weave them into your business habit, you will become more creative, because that classic divergent thinking, where your brain is thinking in a very curious, open way, and it's all about quantity of ideas rather than quality, and that's the place you need to be when you start generating those ideas. That's a skill that you can be better at. So, most people will know of this divergent thinking. I mean, mine's bigger than most, but that's me because I'm a bragger. The paperclip exercise, where you take a paperclip and you spend 60 seconds thinking of different ways to use it, whether it is, a kind of a sledge for a mouse, or, a hair grip, or, some really cool 70s sort of glassy frames, whatever that is, and you do that with different objects, and you do that regularly, that in itself will exercise that kind of divergent thinking muscle. We cannot expect to be creative without practicing. You know, I didn't become the tennis player I am today without practicing it. No, I'm not. I'm shit at tennis. But, you know, everybody has to practice what they want to be better at. And creativity is no different from that. So those workouts, they're like 60 seconds. And I love them because zero business owners can say to me, I haven't got time to practice, because it's literally 60 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that 60 seconds is quite important as well, because I think that can help you, sort of kind of off topic, but that can also help you with your client work as well. Actually, you know, how can we tackle this specific challenge?
Definitely.
So I think for me, I mean, one of the things that I think we wanted to really talk about is how this can have a positive impact on your marketing, because in the work that I do, and I just speak to a lot of people, and I've just done a survey, and you know, people come back there, you know, I've got writer's block, I don't know what to say, and I'm really scared of self-promotion. So I think my sort of thinking around the whole kind of creative piece is that, you know, people go, they log into LinkedIn, being an example, they think, oh, I'm going to post something, I'm going to talk about my fantastic offer, whatever the offer is. And then they suddenly start scrolling through and they think, oh, well, I'm not going to post anything because so-and-so said that, or look at all the engagement they've got. You know, everybody thinks they're wonderful, they're doing much better than me. So I think my view on it is that having that sort of that creative idea that you feel you've worked on and that you feel really confident is something that can make you stand out. And for me, I think that can really, firstly, just help break down some of those barriers, because it's kind of reframing that and thinking, oh, I'm not the same as everybody else, because I've got this thing that it's quite different, and therefore that makes me feel confident.
Yeah, and I think for me, you know, it goes right back to what, you know, the foundation on which any business should be built, which is that whole brand proposition, the brand story. And if you are able to understand and articulate how you are different.
Yeah.
And it is, I know it's the holy grail of all branding and marketing, but if you can spend time doing that, then that will feed through to everything you do. So you're already slightly apart, because, you know, this kind of metaphor of being in a field with your stall and all the industry is there, all the plumbers, all the copywriters, all the social media strategies, all the business support people, you know, you're in that field and you're all, you know, broadcasting your wonderful messages out. And you've got all these punters wandering around and they don't hear anything if all you say is the same as the next 18 stall holders. Yeah. If your stall looks different, before you've even opened your mouth, you've got people interested, and, you know, your brand story is the actual stall and the experience of walking up to that stall. Then when you actually open your gob and start marketing, that will also be different, and people will be engaged, because the whole experience, whether you are entering that through LinkedIn or through a website, the whole piece is different, because you've got that. And, you know, because at the end of the day, any kind of branding and marketing has got to be about difference, both in terms of the messages and how the business is presented, and also how it's executed. So, you know, it's all very well for that. Probably going to get banned from saying this, you know, that all the LinkedIn bros going, well, 10 times your whatever, insert, you know, kind of thing here with this carousel template. That was amazing for the first guy who did it. The 100th guy is now looking a little less like he's got something interesting to say, because there's only so many carousel trips you can take before you get really dizzy and vomit under your desk.
Yeah, and I think that's true. I mean, one of the things that I would say to people is, you know, we all get, particularly around social media, well, around marketing, everybody gets shiny object syndrome. Oh, let's go and join Clubhouse. Do I need to set up a TikTok account? You know, is email marketing old hat? Which it isn't, but that's a topic for another day. But actually, it's about, like you say, you don't want to be the same as everybody else, and that can be down to your content, but also it's down to actually, like, how do your clients like to consume content? Because if you're targeting people who don't like making Instagram reels, for example, who don't like watching Instagram reels, and you don't enjoy making them, then you're not going to stand out because you're going to look pretty awkward. And the people you're targeting are not going to be interested in that content anyway. So I think, like you say, doing that brand piece and laying those foundations and having that kind of creativity within that can really help you stand out because you're really clear. Sorry, Mel's making me look. The comments are making me laugh.
Yeah, and I also think, you know,
they're all your quotes though, so I'm going to have to try and be funny in a minute.
So I'll do a range of t-shirt merch with that. With some
I know, you totally should.
Yeah, and I do think, you know, you raised a really good point there, Mel, about, you know, we as small business owners are often quite guilty of building stuff for us because, of course, we built the entire shebang around our own talent or passion or drive to do something. And that might not be the shape that the customers want. And I think part of the creative thinking process is perspective changing. It's one of the classic things. I use loads of tools, you know, including things called customer shoes, which is, you know, almost literally. And, you know, what I like to get people to do, and working virtually can still work as well, because you create an area on the floor and you draw a pair of shoes and you write your customer type on it and you go and stand on it and look back at your business and go, well, what do I want to be hearing? Whereas I think our default position is, what do I want to be saying? No one gives a what you want to be saying. What do your audience want to be hearing? And actually physically creating a little step over that you can just help change your perspective. So you have to do two bits of paper, your business and your audience. Okay, physically walk across and look back. You know what the great stuff is in there, but as an audience, what's going to resonate with you? What do you really, really want to hear about? And I think just doing those kind of exercises where you're switching positions is a really powerful way to stop just churning out the stuff we think people want to hear.
Yeah, I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head there, because, and I think what's really important here, and unfortunately there is no kind of one size fits all approach for marketing or your business because everybody's different, and you know, if you are a small business and there's 1, 2, 3 or 4 of that is very much about you. So trying to copy what somebody else is doing, whether that's because you admire them, you think they're really successful, or if that's because actually you're kind of doing that without realizing because you haven't identified that point of difference. I think that's really that's not, and I hate to use, we could do a live on all the marketing terms we hate, but that's not going to resonate with your audience because it's not very you.
No, and I think, you know, we are, you know, part of creativity is magpieing, otherwise known as stealing, but I prefer magpieing because it's got wings. So I think, you know, that is, but it's not just about wholesale nicking stuff, you know, because let's face it, how many truly original marketing ideas are there in the world? Not that many.
Yeah, especially now.
Yes, particularly, and we're all working on minuscule budgets, so you know there has to be that kind of magpieing, and I think that's different from shiny object syndrome, but they are they're adjacent. Let's say that you know that they are closely linked. But I think you see something executed really well, and you might say, "Oh, that's really inspired me," but I'm going to put that through the lens of my brand story, and the output will be different. Magpieing it and just chucking it in your LinkedIn feed or creating an email nurture campaign, which is an identikit to someone else. Who are you serving? Not your business, because you're just making it harder to sell that thing. Because really the only question in your consumer's mind, your customer's mind is, why should I choose you? If you're doing the same as 18 other people, that's a really tough choice. But if you're doing something that is distinctly your flavor, they're going to want to take a nibble of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think this is a really, one of the points that we were talking about just now is that it's also important, and I certainly don't do enough of this, I'm going to be honest, that what quite often is different about us is and your business is the other things you do, not just the work that you do, because you know I do, you know, there's lots of people who do social media training, so it's kind of like, you know, like why should people choose Mel over George down the road or whoever it might be? And actually, you know, a lot of that is going to be around, it's not really anything to do with the work that I do. It's that they probably trust me to be the person that can help them. And I think sometimes that's not necessarily about talking about your work, and it doesn't have to be about getting deeply personal, because I know a lot of people are like, I don't want to share my personal life, which is completely fine. That's your prerogative. But actually, it can be talking about a cause or something that your business champions. So I was at a talk in Brighton a few weeks ago, and the person delivering the talk was talking about his business journey, and they donate, I think it's 7% of their profits to charity, and do a lot of fundraising initiatives. And he's like, we don't talk about, they are a marketing agency, but he's like, we don't talk about the work we do because it's boring. You know, we don't think it's boring, but it's quite technical, and people don't necessarily want to know that. But what they want to know is that, yes, we'll do a good job, but actually we care about donating to the hospice or Rocking Horse, which is the local hospital charity here in Sussex. And that can be their point of difference.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And I think, you know, it's, for me, building that experience that, you know, your customer sees of you and your business in its entirety is rarely a singular thing, particularly for small businesses working on tiny budgets. It's more of a jigsaw piece approach, in that, you know, you're building a picture piece by piece through experience, through content, through all of your touch points. And, you know, the fact you donate to charity or plant trees, as we do in the allotment, you know, that's a tiny piece, but together, you know, it becomes a really technicolor vision of what you are and what you stand for and what's important to you. And I think, you know, it goes back to the whole brand story piece, which is where I always end up starting with businesses, because if you get that, you know, and applying creativity is rarely one big transformational idea for your business. It's a million tiny executions of creativity in every area of your business, whether that is onboarding or how you present in your email signature, or the way that you kind of run a session with a client. And, you know, it's everything that builds into this persuasion that the experience of your business is just right for those particular clients that you're trying to attract.
Yeah, I think that's really true. So I think one of the things that we've talked about, and I think we've just covered off quite a lot of different ways to be creative, is that I feel that there's quite often business owners have lots of different ideas. You know, we all do it. You have a brilliant idea, 4 o'clock in the morning, you get really excited about it. You're like, yes, I'm gonna, you know, I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna put that out there and it's gonna be brilliant. But a lot of us will have these ideas all the time.
Yeah.
So, and quite often what happens then is that people don't end up doing anything or any of those, because they're so bombarded with 52 post-it notes with all of these different ideas on it. It's kind of like, you know, well, where do we start and what should be the focus?
Yeah.
And I think, like, drilling down into that is obviously going to have a positive impact on your marketing and your business. But I think, like, but you asking your audience can be quite a powerful, you know, what like you said, what do people actually want from you?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I think that's it's a big part of it. I think sometimes they don't know, particularly if you're trying to be creative, it may be something they've not thought of before, and they are never going to articulate that, you know. So I think there's a few things here for me. One is that kind of starting eight. I mean, I often work with clients where it's just 1,000 started projects littering their landscape, and they're kind of tiptoeing through it, picking up a bit and like holding it out like a dirty pair of knickers, and then going, right, I can't deal with that because that's only half done, so I'll go. And, you know, that's where frustration kicks in, because none of, whether it's marketing or whatever, seems to be working. So I think then it comes back to, look, as boring as strategy, which is just planning, is, where you go, I could just throw an idea at a wall and see if it sticks. Brilliant. We can all do that. And I think our win as a small business is that agility, and our lose can be that agility, because we throw 27 different bits at the wall and we don't even wait to see what sticks, because we're too busy throwing the next clump there as well. And I think, you know, there's a lot to be said for the focus on a single idea, but you won't allow yourself to do that if you don't have a plan where you can go, like, I've got these 3 amazing ideas. Resource wise, budget wise, I can only do one, but what tends to happen is you start all 3 because you get all over excited like a bloody kid on Haribo, and you go. So if you've got a plan, you can forward plan and kind of promise yourself, right, I'm going to do that in the spring, I'm going to do that one in the autumn. Focus on one, give it the best chance. I would say new ideas are like little baby birds. They kind of hatch out, they're all gooey and warm, and you don't fling it out the nest and go, right, let's see if you can fly. It takes a little bit of nurture. You got to feed it, you got to shape it, then you give it a few nudges along the branch, and with any luck it will kind of go off and soar. So I think it's that focus on, let's do this one as well as we can. However, I meet a lot of business owners who are perfectionists because it's their baby, it's their marketing idea, it's their business. And I think that mantra of good is good enough serves us super well. And I say that as a recovering perfectionist. I've done my 10 steps. I'm all right putting something out there that is 80% okay, because actually probably 18% of that, I'm doing maths, who'd have thought that, out of that 20 invisible, kind of, or the rest of that 20%, 18% of that is invisible to anybody but you as the business owner. But that 20% will slow you down in ways that you cannot possibly envisage. So good is good enough. Get focused on one idea. Promise yourself the other ideas will come down the line. It's what Post-it notes were invented for. You put it on the plan. Oh, crap, that hasn't happened. Pick it up, stick it somewhere else, But also give that idea a chance to breathe and to create improvement on it. And I think we're all a bit guilty of going, well, that didn't work. Massive huff, throw it in the bin, move on. Don't worry, I've got another idea here. And then that effort has to start all over again to create that execution. Throw an idea out. It's good enough. Test it, get some feedback, and do that iterative process, which is really in the muscle of creative people, because they don't expect to kind of pop out the golden egg. You've got to do lots of kind of egg laying to get the one that's really shiny and tasty. And I think it's that, the whole Dyson thing of, he did 5,127 prototypes of his first bagless Hoover.
Yeah.
That's just the creative process. It's not all sunshine, rainbows, unicorns, and like, oh my God, I've had a brilliant idea. That's the one bit at the beginning that then you iterate and polish and test and tweak. And that's how you make that massive investment of creativity and hard work to execute that campaign or whatever it is pay off, because you're making it work through test and measuring.
I think that's really key. I think I think there's two things here. I think we, sadly, if particularly if you're not from a marketing background, you don't, or from a sales background, and I'm from both, is that you come out of the corporate world, you set up your own business, and you've never had to think about getting clients before because they've always been there, because somebody else within your organization has been responsible for that. So I think there's two things. I think people don't realize that actually, is particularly if it's a considered purchase or somebody needs to do some work, that this first point of contact might be here, and it might be 2 years before they actually buy from you.
Yeah.
So it's all about building that audience. But during that time, people feel that they're not getting traction really quickly, so therefore they failed, because they see all of these people saying, oh, you sign up to buy. I built a 6-figure business in 6 months because I did this, which is rubbish.
Yeah, nobody tells you where the decimal point is anyway. So, I think you take that with a pinch of salt.
Yeah. So I think, it's a case of, like you say, test and measure, and don't get bogged down in that. But I also think when we are testing and measuring, and I launched an online course a few years ago, it sold really well the first time. There's lots of things, but I didn't do the thing that I needed to do in between, which was the list building of a new audience. But actually on each of the launches, when I sort of analysed the data, there was learnings from that. And the learnings some of the learnings were actually, okay, I didn't sell a lot of that, but I got more one-to-one clients, for instance.
Yes.
or actually that bit works and that didn't, or actually I can use that for a framework for something else. So it's that test and measure thing is really important, because then you are learning and then you can refine. And if you do get to the point where you have to ditch that idea because it really isn't working and nobody wants it, probably because you haven't done the foundations, or I don't know, everybody's gone into lockdown or something like that, there's always something that you can take from that and learn to move forward.
Yeah, and I do think that, you know, and I've been in business 20 years. I've had massive failures. You know, I had a 6-figure business, and I'm telling you, the decimal point was right at the end of that, and it went to pretty much zero because it was the financial crash. And, you know, that's one of my biggest learning experiences. And you can have that in all sorts of scales in your business when you know, from I'm going to try this new approach with a LinkedIn post, you know, and then it doesn't get any traction, or, you know, invites the wrong kind of people to comment, or whatever that is. And you go, okay, I've learned from, you know, so that it's all part of that iterative thing. And I think being a more creative business owner gives you the resilience against, you know, those kind of daggers to the heart when you go, oh, well, I've crafted this wonderful piece of marketing, and, you know, it's like I feel like I'm shouting into the bloody void. You know, where is everyone? I was expecting millions of people to come running, going, you are the answer to all my prayers. You know, don't worry, I'll just throw cash at you. You know, we all have that kind of like, oh, that's, you know, I'm going to do this thing that can create this thing. I think being creative and getting that creativity into the muscle and learning to come up with multiple ideas and learning how to kind of iterate those ideas and reiterate, I think all gives you a resilience against stuff that just goes completely pear-shaped. And actually taking positives from that and taking the learnings out of the burning ashes of your marketing campaign and going, actually, I've got a nice glowing ember here. I'm going to turn it into something else and set fire to something else in a really positive way and move forward with it.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I agree with that. It is just all the testing and measuring, but I think people are quite frightened. They don't know how to do that as well, which again is a conversation for another day. So we've got 3 minutes left, because I've been told by people who've watched all of these things before that it actually does cut you off after half an hour, even though you can keep talking. So I guess, like, for us, really, I suppose the key points are, you know, do take those 60 seconds out of your day, your week, your lunch break to kind of do that creative work with your giant paperclip or whatever you can find on your desk, really. Mine's normally got some sort of toys.
Yes.
I don't think I've got anything very interesting today. I think my 6-year-old's obsessed with tidying up, so he'd probably come in and took everything.
Oh my God, can I have that child? I'm obsessed with making an absolute cyclone of mess.
Oh no, he loves folding clothes. It's kind of good, but it's also very strange. And I think, yeah, and so I think, and I think one of the points you touched on as well is running with that one idea, because I speak to a lot of people, well, and it's like, well, I'm for everyone, or I've got lots of different things, I want to talk about all of them. Just because you talk about one thing, and that probably should be your kind of your either hero thing or that kind of entry level program, which you can then upsell from, doesn't mean people aren't going to ask you about other things, and doesn't mean those things aren't on your website. But it's, you know, if people don't, if you do lots of different things and you talk about all of them, then people kind of don't know what you do.
Yeah, look, I think, you know, go back to the jigsaw piece. You're giving them a singular thing, one at a time, you know, and you can do that sequentially and through different channels. You get a box of jigsaw pieces and throw it in someone's faces, they ain't going to see the picture. They're just going to get really annoyed and really confused about what the hell they're supposed to be doing, and they're slightly covered in small pieces of cardboard. So it's, you know, don't ever be afraid of just being very singular and clear with a nugget. I mean, nuggets seem to be the theme. Maybe I'm hungry, you know. And one nugget at a time, people. You don't need 12, and you don't need the dipping sauce. Just go, you know, clarity, simple steps to feed and build that picture.
Cool. Yeah, I think so. And test and measure.
Yes.
Right, we've got 30 seconds. So really quickly, Jodie, how can anybody watching who comes across this live find out with you, connect with you?
Yeah, if you're not connected on LinkedIn, connect on LinkedIn. I'm there a lot, lots of tools, and that'll then give you the signpost to the allotment and all the stuff in there. The tool shed is free, and stacked full of stuff to make you more creative.
Brilliant. We haven't had a chance to, I don't think we've had any questions, but if anybody has got any questions, do post them in the comments. Jodie and I will answer them. But thank you everybody for joining us, and thanks Jodie for joining me, and we will see you soon. Bye.